Welcome to RSMA's Q&A with Master Reid, myself, and Sifu Wes Otto. We have been receiving a number of requests, as I've always received over the last almost 23 years, questions from the student audience. So we decided that we would answer some of these questions in a more public forum. So we look forward to doing this and also addressing your future questions. What do we have first up?
Our first question I've heard from numerous students, and they want to know, why is Kung Fu more difficult than other styles?
Why is Kung Fu more difficult than other styles? That's one of those questions that can be answered a number of different ways. How I would look at this is first by saying that I think that all traditional systems of martial arts have their place, their time, and they have their significance. What is unique about the Shaolin system sometimes is the variety of material and the amount of material that a student must process on both the internal component and the external component, combined with having to not only develop physical strength, physical skills, but also sensitivity and internal development. So the Chinese systems involve the learning of a large amount of information that stimulates the mind, that forces us to grow and develop, and because of that, instead of just one or two things, it is often considered to be difficult because you don't have to learn just three things. What we've learned over time is that we want to combine this volume of information with a deep degree of understanding. And when you get that, then you are evolving within a system of martial arts.
Okay. You mentioned internal and external, which leads right to the next question. A lot of newcomer students want to know, what is the difference between internal and external?
That is a loaded question right there. Many years ago, I asked that question of a few guys who were well beyond me in my years of training. And all three of them came back to me and smiled and laughed and said, there's no difference whatsoever. So I will look at the camera and tell you guys the difference between internal and external is nothing. You can't have internal without external, you can't have external without internal. With that being said, because we live in America and we like to categorize these things as different, what makes the categorization different? Well, on the external side of things, we think of physical development, we think of push-ups and sit-ups, we think of sparring, we think of things that develop our core outside. And then we think of internal arts as those systems that cultivate us inside of our body, improving our health, improving our mindset, improving our spirituality and our connection beyond ourselves. Now, I'll be the first to say that once you develop an internal perspective and then you put that into your external arts, the question becomes, is your external art still external or is it internal? And we'll leave that to be pondered another day.
Another question that I get from people who just started off in the system, because we have so much material to train, they want to know, as they continue to grow, what should they focus on?
Well, that's a good question. Some systems have a small amount of material and the focus is on that material and then developing a deep well of understanding. That's one way of doing it. As you know, I pared back some of the material from our system. Most people would not think so because we had so much stuff that I thought it was better that we reduce some of the volume and spend more time working on content. What we're looking at now is the developmental stages that a person has within their martial arts training. So it's not so much of we have so much stuff that we're overwhelmed, we're moving along a track. And with that track, at each level you're required to work on a certain segment of skills that are developed, and then from there you branch and move forward and you take those skills and you add more skills to them. So the answer to that question is, what we've laid out for you in the curriculum is, as you progress along, here are the things that you should be working on. Now, sometimes what happens is the student is here for a long period of time, has gathered a lot of information, and maybe stop practicing for a while. That happens sometimes. And now a person goes, well, where do I start again? Well, I always tell people to start at the beginning or start where your interests lie, okay? To answer your question specifically, we have to say, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? My goal as a martial arts instructor is to build a higher connected individual who can function and utilize their martial skills both from a fighting standpoint and also from a day-to-day life standpoint. So if that's the idea, then the question becomes, well, where am I at in my training regime and exactly what am I trying to accomplish? So I answer that question by saying, what are your goals? If your goal is to be in better shape, then you should practice your material with that in mind. If your goal is mental clarity, then you should practice with a more of a mental focus or a more of a meditative approach. If your goal is both, then there's some combination of that. So that is not a question that can be answered, in my opinion, with just one answer. It's multifaceted, okay? Or as one of my instructors would say, it's the plurality of things.
All right, the next question actually comes from Ed. This is for you, Ed. Ed would like to know, how do I turn better with my Dan Tien, using my Dan Tien, and stay down low?
Instructor Ed Kamen has decided to put me on the spot and ask this question in a way where it's not just me and him. So Ed, I would say this: if it was me and you, you know how I'd answer this question for you. But since you've asked this question of me, let's look at that. When we start talking about it, we're dealing now with Tai Chi. Okay, we can do it other things, but Tai Chi Chuan is generally where we start talking about movement from the Dan Tien, and also in flooring arts and so forth. What I would tell a person first to do is to take their hand and place it on their Dan Tien. Take their mind and connect it to their hand. Then move their body by turning their Dan Tien first and letting everything else go from there. All right. We do basic drills that work on this, i.e. our yin-yang circle drills help us to build this connection. So the answer to your question is, how do I do it? I do it by practice. I do it by not rushing from one place to the other. I do it by developing patience in my motion and my movement, and not just doing one segment of, say, my Tai Chi correctly and get connected and then just running to the motions, but by continuing to build a capacity to expand the length of time that I can feel that concentration. So Ed, what I'm saying to you is there's no shortcuts. The answer here is build the connection a little bit at a time, day by day.
All right, that brings us to our last question. What got you into martial arts?
What got me into martial arts? Well, actually, I know that because of how that question was fielded, that question is not for me. That question is for Sifu Otto. So my question of how I got into martial arts is been well documented online, and I'll give you guys the abbreviated version. As a little kid, I grew up watching the Kung Fu series with David Carradine. There were only 3 channels in Southwest Georgia plus PBS, so you watched Little House on the Prairie first, and then you rolled in and watched some Kung Fu. What I loved about the show was not just the fighting aspect of it, but the connection between the student, Grasshopper, and his instructor, Master Po, and how those life lessons got passed on. And then from that point in my life, I was always seeking the opportunity to train. After I got done with my first NFL season, I finally had the opportunity to train. And 23 years later, I'm still running the school, and almost 30 years later training. So that's my abbreviated story. But let us hear how Sifu Wes Otto became interested in martial arts and what led him to Shaolin Kung Fu.
Well, I'd never done martial arts before in my life, and I had a couple friends that had done it before. One of my best friends had done Wing Chun for a number of years, and one of my other friends did some kind of martial art. He wouldn't tell me exactly what, but it definitely looked Chinese in nature. And never gave any thought to it until I got to grad school. And I was going through my master's degree and taking online courses, so I had all this extra free time. And I said, why not? Let's go ahead and do some martial arts. So I did a search online and came across what was then called the Chinese Shaolin Center. I remember coming out on Wednesday night and witnessing the black belt class and all these people sweating so much I didn't think it was humanly possible. After that, I signed up for the 2 weeks, and as soon as I got done with that, I gave Master Reid 6 months. And it was really when I got to Saturdays and I met Sifu Kafani Yubuku. He was my first person that I really connected with at the school, and I loved his way of teaching and explaining. And I always did Saturday classes with him, and it was actually he that asked me, as soon as I turned brown belt at the time, to start assisting him during classes. And that's when I started teaching. And so I was assisting him for quite a long time until I finally got my own classes, and I started teaching 2-3 days a week, and the rest is pretty much history. I just fell in love with the system and just kept going from there.
Well, there you have it. Now we understand and know how Sifu Wes Otto has gone from beginning student to martial arts school owner and operator, so that's a great thing. Well, that's going to wrap us up, I do believe, for this segment of Ask RSMA. We look forward to your future questions. You can submit those at AskRSMA We'll give that to you next time. Actually, it will be questions at Reid Shaolin Martial Arts. Okay,
Yep.
so questions at Reid Shaolin Martial Arts is where you submit your questions if you like for us to answer them online, and we'll bring this to you several times a month. You guys keep training hard, and remember, there's no progress without what? A little sweat equity. See you later.
Bye.